this year. But once we've got a few more things consolidated, we will announce the awards, the summit, and of course the dinner. So keep it in the back of your minds. We'll be getting back to you about the date and the event, and we'll be looking at doing something in September. So now let me not talk anymore, otherwise before you know it, Pauline will be, going back to Las Vegas and won't have done her presentation. So Pauline, welcome to your WINTRADE Global Talk. It's amazing. We've been talking about this for quite some time, haven't we?
We have, yes, but it's always perfect timing. It's 11:11 just gone, so this is
woo! I love it. I love it. Now we have to excuse Dr. Pauline because she has got a bit of the lurgies and her throat is bothering her, but she still made it here because she made that commitment and she wanted to make sure that she didn't let us down because we've all waited so long for this to happen. So without further ado, I am going to say, Dr. Pauline Crawford, this is your WINTRADE Global Talk. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. And I so appreciate being here. And I'm going to share my screen. So let me see if, can you see this screen? You can see me twice. And I love the fact that you were saying, Yvonne, about everybody in the audience shining their light in the audience, because that for me is so important. It's this idea that we shine our light, all of us, women and men. But it is really key in this presentation that we take a look at where we are today in this crazy pandemic world. And as you could see on my other screen, there are certain words that I think we need to focus on. And I believe that, I believe the future is female, and that's not to exclude men at all. And I'm so delighted that Joel and Marty are here because they are both incredible supporters of women. And you'll find out more about Marty as we go on. But for me, I just want to tell you a bit of a story. So I'm just hoping my screen will work. I'm pressing something and nothing's happening. Okay, this is where technology gets to be annoying. Oh, there we go.
Right.
So I believe that the world is much more circular and colorful. And I know those of you who know my work know that I'm very passionate about these things. But women really understanding that we have an opportunity to rewrite the script. So my challenge today is, can women change the game of business fundamentally for the good of all parties? So that's for men and women of all diversities, all cultures, all preferences, of ages, everybody. And if so, how do we as women, with the help of our wise men, really use the knowledge, experience, and awareness of equality to ensure harmony for their future growth? And this real passion of mine is for us to understand our differences and our similarities, because I do think that we've come a long, long way. And I love what happened in Oslo. That's fantastic, Yvonne. But I think we can go further. So I want to push the boat out and create much more light. And I want to share this with you. Back in 2010, before I met my American husband and ended up on this side of the planet, I drew this. And as you can see, it's very rough. It's a real drawing. And it was all about smiles and transforming business with love and pound notes. I didn't know I'd end up in America. But it's about educating future generations. I want to set up the Smile Foundation. This was in 2010. And then I met Jim, and I met him in Budapest in 2011. And we ended up getting married in 2012. And we traveled the world, and we lived in Malaysia for 4 years, and now we're in America. And it seems that nothing happens without meaning. There's no such thing as an accident. I think there's a synchronicity about the fact that we are now shining our light. But how do we as women and men, but how do we as women transform the landscape? How do we co-create a new narrative and make sure that we keep on smiling? Because we know there's lots of problems out there. We get lots of mixed messages. We get lots of conversations that don't work, and we get into blame situations. And Who's in charge? Is it me? Is it her? Or is it him? Is it them? We get frustrated when we're not heard. We want to make assumptions and judgments, and we start finding things fall short. And we've had 2 years of amazing challenges with COVID, but we've really coped well. And we've come through this because I believe all of us desire magical conversations. And essentially, it's where we listen, where we observe, we set intentions, and we start creating a space which is both sacred and seeding opportunities. So if you're with me, I believe it's time to rewrite the script. And I'm coming from the point of view that the future is female. And I will explain in a minute why I'm saying that instead of feminine, because I do honor the masculine and the feminine, but I want to look through a female lens after centuries, especially the last century of equality. Now, this is interesting that William Shakespeare, the bard from Britain, wrote this. What's past is prologue. So can we honor everything that we've learned in our decades of fighting for equality, for the vote, for a place at the boardroom, and move to harmony? So we're not ignoring the past. We're not excusing the past. We're saying the past is all relevant. It's the prologue. But we know that women do things in different ways. That's why our wise men love us. And what I want to suggest is that we learn the lessons, we keep the best and release the rest. And what's happened in this COVID period is that we've all learned to be outside more, inside more, but on our own. We've had social distancing, but we've appreciated life. And it's one of the things I've been saying for 30 years, since I started Corporate Heart International. I said, women bring life to work. Yes, men come into work with their breath and their life, but they often leave the family situation behind, and they go into work, they earn their money, they create, and they've created our world the way it is. But women take their life into work, and we always are challenged by the facets of our lifestyle, which are about children and family and elderly parents and the community. And I know recently Funzo was on the session with the power of community, and Yvonne and Sydney on WINTRADE. We talk about the power of togetherness. Now, it's not that men don't want to be together, but I'm going to challenge and say that a lot of men probably didn't really want equality because they didn't need it. But we have striven and gained so much, but now we have to put life and business together. We want to appreciate. We don't want to go against nature. The one thing about females is we really honor Mother Earth, and we know that the essence of life is in love, not fear. So these pictures are just to kind of bring us into this mood about what is the future if you're looking through female eyes. What are the shoots of a new script? And this is where the masculine and feminine energies come together, because we've got a seriously important road to lead now. So although that road is going straight, it's going to the mountains, it's going to massive, multifaceted areas of our life. And the strength of the masculine, the oak tree, the strength, the strong, which we've seen mainly in men, but also in some women, is balanced by the softness, the gentleness of nature, which is fluid and flowing. I personally love the sea, and I love the idea of the river flowing to our future. Now, can you imagine that we're not all the same? So these two trees are not the same, but they're both trees. And you can imagine if this one on the right is a willow and this one on the left is an oak, they're having a conversation about, well, I'm the best tree in the world. The oak is going to say, no, I'm really strong and big. The willow's going to say, but I bend and the wind gets fierce. So there's lots of values about working together. But we have always come from a male perspective. So I want to look at how we create a new narrative. And these are the kind of things that I work with. Personal energy is really important for women. Real synergy with other women and with men, with our children, with our parents, with our communities. Always supportive and expansive. And what I'm saying is realistic, intelligent, and life interdependence. Now, interdependence means that men and women are independently themselves an individual and very easy to work and collaborate together. So the kind of illustrations we see now around our world, homeworking, businesses in different countries of the world. I work with women in Thailand, in Africa, in India, in Malaysia, where I used to live, in America now, and obviously in England. And there are lots of places where women are still marginalized, as we know, and we know that they have challenges with funding and all sorts of things. But it's not about women running the world, but coming from a female perspective. So be very clear about my approach here. So I'm saying equality has really got us to a good place. But now harmony, coming from a female lens and understanding the multifaceted, amazing range of talents that women have, can we really get to have one voice and redesign, rewrite the script and invite our amazing wise men too? Over the last 2 years, I've been working with Magical Conversations. Magical Conversations go back to 2008. My daughter said to me, "I think you're the president of Magical Conversations." I said, "Oh, I think the president title is a bit grand, but I'll have an ambassador." And the thing about Magical Conversations is they honor each one of us. So this is the theme behind a magical conversation. I'm important, you're important, we're important. You make an impact, I make an impact, we make an impact. Can we really listen and hear each other, especially when it comes to what I would say are tricky, delicate subjects? And we know that there are plenty of those around. The magical conversations are your experiences shared with no judgment in that space of time. Now, we all have judgments. We see things, we go, you know, that's this, we have our perceptions, we have all sorts of things going on. But what I'm saying is we can put those to one side when we're in the circle. And the circle is really important. Now, if I had my way, I would remove every square table from every boardroom and put round tables in. Because like King Arthur, one of my favorite British heroes, he knew that there was a value in having a round table where we all share the same eyesight to everybody. So magical conversations are your experiences shared with no judgment, allowing you to feel safe to contribute. And flow is a really important part of my work. So we got to move away from mindset to mind flow. And this is going to be part of what I'm talking about here, that we know that, my screen has just stopped again. So what we know is that these are my point of views and my experience, that life is worth living. So listen and do not act on anything unkindly or with intent to disagree. Be true to thyself, but my perspective is my perspective. And respect the moment, good or bad, with unconditional love and compassion. And I believe that women are very good at this because we have a core circular nature in our relational base. And I'm going to explore that with you. But create value as sacred human beings, holding the space between us with loving intentions to see the future. Now, this may sound very grand to some men out there, not to the men who are on our call now, because you're wise, but the men out there who would tut and say, "Oh no, that's too wishy-washy." But it is a truth for women, is that we are sacred circle, conversational people. We loved to talk. In 2018, I did some research talking to men about men, and all of these are on my YouTube channel, which I shall share with you. But when I asked men about men, how's it for men? They all said, well, we just want to be respected for who we are. We're very simple, straightforward guys, and women are very complex. And this was their words, not mine. And what was interesting was that I asked them at the end, what advice would you give women to be in partnership with you in business? And they said, just to allow us to be the simple, straightforward people we are, and not to try and change us. So we're not trying to change men. We're looking through a female perspective, and this is different. Equality was really important, but we do need to understand that it hasn't given us the harmony that we seek, because we still are working through that very strict, square, structured, operational business premise. So let's remind ourselves again of this cycle. Know yourself in the context of being a woman, not a woman trying to be in a man's world. Tune into others. How do we sense, and women are very good at being intuitive and sensing the energy in a room. We get the gut feeling when somebody isn't quite tuned into us. It doesn't mean they're wrong or that we're right, but we just don't tune into them. So it's important to understand, and I call this a value creation cycle. And it's very important because this is what makes us click. And we actually can hold hands across the universe. So not just men and women, but different cultures, different religions, different sexual preferences, different colors, different ethnicity, different everything, different abilities. And living in Malaysia for 4 years was a huge, huge adventure for me, and a huge understanding that on that side of the world looks very different to the world that I grew up on in England, in London, looking at the world from a Great Britain point of view. So this is a very important statement. We are each unique, just like everyone else. We are equal and different. And in that, I believe we need to understand. So I set about understanding this. And in 2020, when all the COVID started, I went online like we all did. And every month I gathered people from all across the world. We've got people here from America, from England, from Malaysia, from all sorts of places. And they came in every month, and all of that again is on my YouTube. And they came in to talk about this value cycle. But the initial reason for doing this was to understand, do men and women see the world differently? So what we would do is we would break out into rooms and ask the same question to men, same question to women. And really, it wasn't so much about the content, but the way we describe things is different. We see the world in different ways, but we're all at core human beings. So this is the similarity and the differences. So core is very important philosophy here in this masterclass, where you can all make a choice any moment of any situation, of any conversation, to be loving or fearful, angry or kind, joyful or sad. And we take ownership of that situation, take responsibility for the outcome, which may be to disagree. We may not get to a situation where we always agree, but the energy that we have in the room is important. And I want you to challenge yourself as to whether you have what I call angel energy or vampire energy. And I'm sure you've all come across vampires before. So when I talked to all these men and women, there was one point where I asked them, how do we see each other? So I just want to share with you, the first two columns are women about women, men about women. So all these words in red are how men and women see women. And the other two columns are about men. But if you notice in the two columns about women, nurturing comes up from both sides. It doesn't appear anywhere in the men's list, but there are words which are akin to this: protector, provider. So a very small sample, but I know that there are other research. If you look up the Athena doctrine, we'll find that there are some commonalities about what are fundamental differences. So this is not saying that we can't be all the differences in the world, but it's saying, let's look at the world that is now and what can we do? It's my passion. And my passion meant that I wanted to find out what kind of woman I was. I was very masculine minded, and I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I'm a loving human being, but I knew I was different to some of my sisters in my childhood, in my schooling, in my years. And I looked, and when Lehman Brothers went down in 2008, when I was working in the corporate world, and I really said, yeah, well, if it was Lehman sisters, maybe life would be different. I started thinking about this square world that we had been designed, and that women in the circle had always been advancing into. And I believe that what we need to do is to make a whole circle of life. The whole circle of life combines everybody, and it combines the world that we live in, the pandemic, lockdown, changing work situations. And what I want to do is to help us as women, the future is female, that women take hold of this new script, include men and include the universe of the world, but start from our point of view and make it a world that we honor kindness and compassion, respect, all the things that we talk about on my screen behind me. So how can we do this? The key is that with women, we need to get to understand each other. So remember I said, I was always passionate about understanding why I was who I am. And I entered the image profession in 1989, long time ago. And I was president of the Federation of Image Consultants. And I really found that all my members, 200 of them, were very different types of women. But there were some patterns, there were some similarities that I started observing. Physically and emotionally, mentally, there were some core behaviors that we could understand underneath all the diversities of our personality. So I designed this map to help me, and it's helped thousands of women and men, because the men are involved as well, but I'm focused on the women here. But it's helped thousands of women in Malaysia, in the UK, in Europe, and now in America to say, oh, that's why I'm like this. That's why I get on with so-and-so, and that's why I'm different to somebody else. And those of you who know my work know that this does work. And in fact, I'm going to post an amazing interview that my lovely friend Fonsa did with me, because that was such an amazing interview. And I really honor you, Fonsa, for doing that. That was so good. You asked exactly the right questions about how does it work? How do these archetypes work? So I designed 2 archetypes for women, and I just share them briefly. And I'm not going to go into absolute detail, but they are called the sovereign and the magician. And the sovereign has a wonderful intuitive core. She has the divine feminine and the divine female. And for me, the masculine mind, the logic when I stay in my head is the divine masculine, but it's all within the female body. So I think it's about the divine female meeting the divine male. And our masculine and feminine energy, when we're all behaving well, and of course we can't behave badly, enables us to become harmonious, but respect our differences. And that's my passion, is to be aware of what is different and equal. That if we respect our differences in a new world designed by women, and this will take some time, so I'm not saying it will be immediate, but there were a lot of examples, as with the Oslo conference and companies we know, where people are honored and people and passion and prosperity and peace come before profit. That this is how it works. So I'm a magician, and I see the world from my heart as a female, but from my head as slightly more masculine minded. So I'm going to pop the 2 men in there just to finish, because they are in there as well. And I will come back in a little while, show you a bit more. But the proposition here is that if we take hold of that purple energy and we design the world that suits us, in mind of everything that's happened in the last century and everything that's happened with equality, and remember the past is a prologue, this is our time. This is our time to accelerate this process. And your light is unique. And remember, we talked when Yvonne was saying about getting everybody to shine their light, that energy of light. Your light is unique, but it's part of the total light that shines in the world. And my passion is that women really have a unified voice, and that we don't get any challenges from each other, because we get challenges from people outside of our female community, whatever we like to call it. And I think that we have an opportunity now to really make a difference. So remember, know who you are in order to know others. And this is a very simple guide, which are very, very top highlights. So for the women on the call who have not seen this before, if you think about men in your life, you get the ruler who's real action man, and you get the philosopher who's a people person. Now the ruler is also interested in people, they're not unemotional, but these 2 guys have masculine energy and feminine energy, the same with the women. So the magician and sovereign have slightly different views on collaboration and community. But what's fascinating, and I want the women on the call to just think about this, is that very often women want to be both magician and sovereign. Whereas in my experience, men know whether they're a ruler or a philosopher. And that is something for you to just ponder on there. Women are very relational, very circular, very and. So it doesn't surprise me that we want to be both. But the challenge is, who are you being at the moment you're meeting somebody, so that I can tune into you and understand you and not misunderstand you. So remember, each of us are unique, just like everybody else. So if we take a look at these characters a little bit more, because remember, we're going to rewrite the script, not just play ball with what has been. Everything is shifting. I'm reading so many articles about companies that are really moving to people, planet, prosperity as major parts of their mission and vision, and people understanding individuals and differences are so important. And we know that the diversity and inclusion agenda, but do we have the right conversations? Can we get into that space where we really, truly understand when somebody is different? So all women are more relational based. It's our hormones, it's our menstrual cycle, it's our ability to be birthing children. If we choose that, we have an attachment with nature, which is a monthly cycle. We tune into the moon. We're relational task people. And this idea of being multitaskers is so important. And I'm sure Joel and Marty are sure that they're multitaskers, but women actually multitask all at the same time. And it's something, unless you're inside the female body, you don't actually know what that really means. But we're extremely, extremely, extremely good as entrepreneurs and business women. And we cater for our life as well. Remember, women bring life to work. But there are some who are slightly more in their head, like me, that might appear to be more emotionless, get on and do it attitude. Now, as I said to you before, women often want to be both. And the magician and the sovereign do have a lot in common because they are core relational people. But in my experience of the sovereign, as indicated by the archetype, she creates her castle and she likes to get everything very, very nurtured. Her emotions are top level. And sometimes the sovereign sees a magician as less emotional and not being really a woman. I'm going to leave you with that thought because I know that there are lots of tender issues when it comes to women with women. And I want to share just a story that I've presented with so many women's groups in Malaysia, in US, in UK, in Europe, and I'll often, in an all-women audience, women will come up to me and say, you've got to sort out how women get on with other women, because we don't always. Now, that's not a critique. Men don't always get on with each other. Sometimes it's just the way it is. We're seeking to find a synergy, and synergy is how we understand our differences. So in a world which is sometimes looking for, breaking the bias, getting beyond the barriers, I don't want us to become all the same, because then we lose our beautiful uniqueness that makes us different. I want to honor the complementary value of the head and the heart, the masculine and the feminine within our femaleness. So we can take a look at that, but let's just have a quick look at the men, because we do have some men here, and I'm sure that you ladies want to look at men as well. The ruler tends to be very bullet point. He's the man who's always got an agenda and he sticks to it. And the philosopher is the more gentle. I would quote Nelson Mandela as a philosopher. It's a very strong leader, male leader, but had that intuitive sense. The difference with the ruler is that he would tend to be very fixed on task. So if you ask a ruler and a philosopher, which you favor, task or people, you'll find the ruler says task first and then people, and the philosopher says people first and then task. It's a very simple balance. And balance is really key in all of this work, because if we're going to rewrite the script, we're not excluding everybody or anybody. So do you remember the cycle? Know yourself, tune into others, create a new narrative. I believe that in order to know ourselves, We have to understand our own authentic power as the woman we are, or the man that we are, or the sexual preference we are, or the gender identity we are, or the color that we are, or the culture. So I'm a Brit, and I'm a straight woman, I'm a grandmother, a mother, I live in America now, I have a green card. All those things, they're facets of who I am. And my core talents, my natural gifts are that I love designing things, I love concepts and connecting dots. So once we start to know each other, how do we share with each other to create authentic harmony? We can only do that when we tune into others and share who we are. And if we want an authentic world, which is through a female lens, then we really got to invite men to a new landscape and say, how would you like to be in this environment? Not ask them what they think about it, but we've created it, and we've taken everything that's good from the past, including everything we've learned from you. And now we invite you to be in this authentic world. I know it's a big mission and a big vision, but that's where my head is going. And remember that the core is important. Make a choice, take ownership, be responsible, and create the energy in the room. So if we look at being in harmony with nature, I think we can learn from nature. Remember the oak tree and the willow, both trees, but they have different functions, if you like. We need men, we need women, we need different types of men and women. And we need to get past some of the barriers. So we need to look at each other and respect and value the differences and similarities. So we're all human beings, it makes us similar. We're not all the same generation, so we know that for sure. We're not all the same cultures. We don't all have the same religions. We don't all have the same preferences. How do we explore that? Remember, in a magical conversation, we don't make a judgment. So what we do in a magical conversation is we say, in my experience of this topic that we're talking about, X, Y, Z, this is how I perceive it. And then we stop talking and we listen. So my ideas for you is that we need to relax. We've got everything we need. We do need to work at a good pace. But like Yvonne said, you know, this time next year, we'll all go to the She conference. We'll create these events in South Africa. We'll go on the tour. We'll speak the language. But for women, let's remember who we are as nature gave us. We need to be healthy in order to be wise. So when we discuss magical conversations, we go through every topic. So we put topics out in life, business, education, health, family, community, and we listen and we seed creative innovation in that space. And my dream is that we live with freedom from trauma, because so many women we have trauma in life. We hold on to it and we need to deal with it. But I want to move forward. I want to have that line in the sand. And these are my breakthrough insights over the last short while, is that sometimes it's very scary, exciting. My husband was ill with COVID over Christmas and nearly died. And I learned a lot about stepping out and not being scared, but not being over scared. Actually living with less pressure, allowing myself just to be in that space. And I asked people for prayer. And I know some of you actually were there in my prayer circle, and I'm so appreciative. But I realized that we've all got used to a flexible life now. Flexible working at home is a proposition we can enjoy. So we need to detach from what has been and focus on what is. In this time with Jim, who's now much better, and he's walking and he's healthy, and we've moved house and we've come through this veil of COVID, it's amazing to see the world in a different way. And we have much more joy and laughter. And I think that's what we need to do, even though there are awesomely awful things happening in the world with the war in Ukraine. It's women who are making the difference there, who are protecting their children. And they are fighting with their husbands, but they are gaining more by being in tune with themselves and their children. And I think it's about surrendering without losing hope, which may be a difficult concept for some people, but that's what I found helped me in that period. So if we, I don't think we'll do this at the end, but I want you to think about, as I'm talking, what's the one word that describes authentic harmony to you? what does it mean when you think about authentic harmony everywhere? So it's not just authentic harmony with your husband or your wife or your children. It's harmony in that difficult business place. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? What could make the difference? Being okay to be exactly who you are and be the woman that you are. And remember, there will be men and women in the room who are different. How do we explore those relationships and understand the magic of the circle? Remember King Arthur's round table. So these are the guidelines. Know and value who you are and who others are. Come to the table with your experience, not your ego. Contribute with no judgment or anger, and act without pressure to control the outcome. Seek outcomes that are inclusive. We've lived in a world which has been very results-oriented, KPIs, etc. And now we need to gather everything together and announce what it is we really want. So my proposition to you is that, yes, we can change. We can change the game of business. And I deliberately put the game of business because I don't want it to be a battle anymore. We've got a battle in Ukraine. We've got viciousness going on. We've got polarized views. Everybody's arguing. Let's look at the game that we can play that creates harmony, that understands that sometimes we're polar opposites, but actually polar opposites are almost the same because they are polar opposite. And we can go into that further. And we need to use our knowledge, experience, and awareness of everything that we've learned through equality to ensure harmony. And use our imagination, use all the gifts that are free. So our imagination, our curiosity, our ability to love, and learn from our similarities and differences that this colorful flow of life is the cohesive unity. And we can actually, as women, speak with one voice, the voice of harmony. Now, if that rings true for you, this is only the start of the journey. It's a place that we need to go to challenge ourselves with different situations. So if I may, I want to share what I've learned over the last 72 years, nearly 73 years of my life, and especially the last 2 years, and especially the last 4 months with Jim. We're on a new path. See the world as in need in a good way. We could look at the news and go, oh, what is impossible? And we can look at the news and say, wow, we need to go out there and do something. This will be uncomfortable. The waves are fierce and flowing. It's not going to be straightforward all the time. There are times when we'll be biting our tongue, but gestation, as all of us women who've had babies know, it takes at least 9 months, maybe 9 years, hopefully not. Always speak with words of hope and honesty, and don't let naysayers into your sacred space. I sadly had some people in my time when I was worried about Jim who were not that helpful, and there were a few, so that was okay. But I realized that what was relevant and what wasn't relevant, and it was relevant to be careful of our health and mindful of our love and to be in a space together. But it's about taking risks. As women, we're always taking risks, but open our hearts and love madly and be aware of a new consciousness arising. Do not be afraid. And if we do feel afraid, let's call a friend and say, oh my God, I'm feeling afraid. Can we talk? The other thing is receive higher guidance. Don't rush past signs. There were signs everywhere that are saying, this is what we need to do. And a big sign is, and I don't know whether Yvonne, you realize this, but originally I was going to do this masterclass on the 31st of March. And today is the 22nd of March. And 22 is a very powerful magic number. So, and the full moon was last weekend, and I believe there is a moon shift, especially for women. It says we now have to stand up and make this world a better place. And with wings outstretched, I invite us women with our wise men to fly in formation. I don't know whether we all know, but geese fly in formation. And when the leader gets tired, what they do is they let another geese goose fly into the leadership place. So you watch this, it's amazing. They always end up flying in harmony and formation, but the leader keeps on changing. So this is a very important part of us as women, that we actually have that ability to understand our formation together. And anytime we've ever fallen out with other women or had problems, let's remember the geese. Now, my screen's just gone funny again. I don't know why. It's, come on. I do love it when technology just doesn't work. So for some reason, it's not working. So I'm just going to stop share and then go back again. Just let me finish that. Because for some reason, the screen has gone into, but it's all about being flexible. I'm not quite sure what's happened to my screen. It's decided not to work. I don't know whether you have any ideas on this.
Pauline, I'm not sure what it is, but you're so mesmerizing anyway. I think you can just pretty much go ahead and keep talking, because I'm completely focused on what you're saying, and I think everybody else is as well.
Okay, well, this is really the last slide. That is that if we do fly in formation, and I've got it written down here, is that we can actually. That's right. So the next point was going to be, we need to resonate at the same frequency. Now, again, resonating at frequencies is something that women are very good at. I think, sometimes women can be territorial about emotions, and sometimes men can be territorial about possessions. There's so much complexity that we can share with this idea. But what I want to suggest is that we really focus on resonating in any meeting with the energy of the people in the room. So whether we're a magician or a sovereign or a mixture, and we're meeting with rulers and philosophers, and they're all different ages and generations, resonate at the level of the people in the room. And I found that when I was in Malaysia, I'd never lived in a very different continent. I know America and England are actually different, but we don't speak the same language, but we kind of speak English. But in Malaysia, it was a very, very different culture, and I had to start tuning in at a different level. And I was there for 4 years. And by the time I got really into it, I realized it was just a different vibration. It was a very humid climate. You spent more time in air conditioning, but there were 3 cultures there. There was Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist. There was a very pleasant atmosphere everywhere. Everybody was keen to grow. It's actually just resonating at different levels. And I think that's really important. So whether we're involved with the resonance of WINTRADE or the resonance of Rotary or the resonance of any organization that we belong to, remember your own resonance. The frequency of these archetypes help us to understand that men are different. So when we look at the ruler and the philosopher, we can get to love them in their wise state. Now, everybody can be not good. So magicians and sovereigns can also be not good sometimes, but everybody can be rising their awareness and their light as they shine at the top of that lighthouse. The power in sharing experiences and listening rather than acting too quickly. And really that's my kind of ending here, is that I think what I've discovered with Magical Conversations, and maybe it's a kind of a natural mediation kind of style, and my tolerance is that when you step into that space, you won't always hear things that you like, but you have honored the rule of listening. And I know when I was running Magical Conversation circles in Malaysia, there was a women's circle. We had very different religions in the circle, very different individuals, personalities, that they all tended to be of a mature age. Maybe that was because of my age, but we tackled some quite difficult subjects, and they really made us think, and we would draw up everything that was said. And then when we found the end of the space, so it was time for coffee, we would just take the words and come back and look at them. And there were amazing things that popped out. And in our masterclasses, which we run, we can share those. And I would love to do that with those women who want to create this new narrative with the men here. So absolutely, this is the message. And I suppose in my final thought is, why co-create? Because it's nature. Nature gives us so many reasons to co-create. How do you contribute to co-create? That's what I want you to think about. And what do we do next? And not rushing into too many quick answers. If you see what I've got on my screen behind me, these are some of the words that I think women honor. And you can see them. We honor love, balance, kindness, emotional integrity, creativity, collaboration, trust, respect, equity, synergy, authenticity, expansion, relationships, prosperity, peace. So my plea to you is, how do we take that to the world and make it work for all of us, so that by the time I come to my final date in this world in 20 years' time, I can say hand on heart, I was part of this with all of you. That's my mission.
Wow. Thank you very much. Can I ask everybody to unmute and just give Pauline a round of applause? She was such a trooper with her sore throat, but it was an absolutely amazing presentation. Thank you.
Yvonne, people can't unmute without
some can.
helping, so I'm just trying to unmute everyone very quickly now.
Oh my word, that was awesome, Dr. Pauline. Absolutely.
Thank you,
So much,
Yes.
so much in there. God, packed.
Well, I really wasn't expecting, because I haven't seen this. I think the last time I saw one of your presentations, it was with Helena. How many years ago was that?
Oh.
Quite a few.
Long time ago, in my other lifetime.
So I hadn't seen this particular presentation, but it was really full of gems and, so engaging. And there's something for every single one of us that's on the screen. So thank you very much. So,
now we can clap. Most of us are unmuted.
yes, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. So at this point, I mean, obviously, I've got a few questions, but if anybody else has a question, just raise your hand and we'll go round and make sure.
Yeah, can I just ask you, Yvonne, can everybody unmute or not? Because I think some people
Yes.
can't.
Well,
I'm trying to ask everybody to unmute. I don't know how to do it as a group. We need Villa, but I'm trying to give everybody.
Jill and Glenna, can you unmute?
I'm unmuted, yeah.
Yeah, Joel,
Can you hear me?
I'm asking Glenna to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Glenna's unmuted. Maybe I need to do it. Hold on. Let's have a look. Yeah, I need to do some, but I've done some. Is that everybody unmuted? That's amazing. So, yep. Okay. So we have the magical conversations. Is that your book?
that's my book. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So do we have a link?
I do. Give me a moment. I'm just going to put the link to Dr. Pauline's book in the chat, so you can all go and grab a copy to be.
But also make sure, and this is why we don't like everybody unmuted, because we get everybody's background. But anyway, if we can also put the link for the download in case anybody's not seen or not collected their download as yet. I think I may be able to do it. I don't know.
I've got that right here.
Yes, and in the download, there's principles which are in the book, but the download will show you some principles that you can try out to make sure your conversations are magical.
Fantastic, fantastic. And the downloads are free. So do grab a copy, and it also has information of how you can get in touch with with Dr. Pauline. So one of the things that I really want to answer, I know you talked about the fact that, or certainly from a WINTRADE point of view, and I think it's the same as yours, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We might be different parts of the world, we might be different cultures, we live under different circumstances, but more often than not, we are going through the same pressures, the same hurdles, the same life in so many ways. So how does this presentation relate to people? Because I think you've talked about doing this in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. And so how does this presentation relate to those people, those women?
Well, it does, because do you remember, we've all got a choice. So we can choose to smile at something. I mean, we know stories across our history of you know, the ones about Auschwitz and people who could smile even there. You know, we know that in the Ukraine that there are terrible things happening, but there's the curious little stories. Like I heard one about a Ukrainian mother who phoned a Russian mother and said, "We have your son in captive here, but he's well."
Wow.
And there's a woman talking to another woman in the middle of a war because she knows that this woman will be worried about her son. So it's like everywhere we can make choices which have nothing to do with money and nothing to do with our situation. We can choose to smile. And this whole thing about smiling is so important because it's a free gift. It's not smiling with irrelevance. It's smiling because this is a human activity. It's something that helps us to grow. And when we smile, that happens. And when I was 17, I was writing in my scruffy little notebook, and I've got that. I said, I'm going to smile all my life because it makes me look better. And I don't understand why adults don't smile, because it just seemed like an obvious thing to me. Maybe this is me being the magician in my head, but it's like I went through some really, really sad time over Christmas when I didn't hear from Jim for 6 days, and I didn't know what was going on. But and I was really broken, but I kept on watching cheesy Christmas movies and smiling at the dog and eating my food because I knew I had to keep going. So it is relevant, the idea of the magical conversation. And it's something I didn't say, but it's about imagining the space between us. So even when we're on Zoom, there's a space between us where the conversation lands. And rather than letting vicious conversation hit us and damage us, we leave it in that space.
And I think it's also I don't want to say it's a trick, but it's a way of making sure it's a survival thing, really. So anyway, I don't want to take up all the time talking to Dr. Pauline. Does anybody else have any questions? Just raise your hand and then we can unmute you. Fumza, now I know that you've worked with Dr. Pauline. Just tell us a bit about your experience and you know, how does it relate? How has her presentations related to women in South Africa? Oh, she just got stuck.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always marvel at her passion every time she talks about this conversation, because she met me at a point, Dr. Yvonne, where I've been doing a bit of work with women and with a program called She Unleashed, but it was a little bit more on the, you know, the aggressive side of saying, create a space for us, inclusion, this and that. And this calming voice met me right in the midst of that to say, look, there's a way of achieving what you want to achieve in a different energy, and which can be quite effective. So it taught me a lot, and I think the women that I deal with as well, because there's a lot of introspection. You know, there are keynotes that she talks about that are really like, you know, they make you think. She says you need to be aware that you are you are energy. Wherever you are, you influence people around you. You are standing as a lighthouse. And wherever you come in conversations, if you're aware that you're a lighthouse, then you'll take accountability and responsibility for your own energy. And a lot of her work is she says, pace yourself, calm down. Because I think especially our era, we're so quick to respond. We're so quick to attack. We're so quick to call it names and say, include me, or to perceive things in our own mind as, okay, they just jumped over me again. They didn't listen to my point. But we don't introspect to say, who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to a philosopher who is most likely going to understand where we're coming from because he can apply his mind? And that awareness, Dr. Yvonne, requires a lot of maturity. And, it's a different energy to how we've been applying ourselves in corporate. So in South Africa, we are in the season of calling for more seats around the table. We are in a season of saying in decision-making places, you need more women. But I think we'll achieve a lot more with this awareness and this type of work to say, once you are given that seat around the table, it's not about you anymore. It's not about Pumza, trying to show that she can do it, or she, she's trying to put up a show that she's it and all. But it's about harmoniously creating environments where we can, be catalysts for many more women to join the conversations. And we need men. So she spoke to me about this, and it's funny because I told her I'm in a team with only men, and I'm the only female that is in chief marketing and sales environment. The others are finance, the other is a CEO. And I just found it hard, to navigate myself around this environment. And it was always war, war, war. It was always war because I would make my point whether they wanted it or not. But I think with understanding, the archetypes, approaching my CEO differently and understanding that this guy is a ruler. It's about the short sentences, about facts, it's about this. There was so much more effectiveness in how I engage. I love her work. She knows I love it to bits. And I think the essence of her is love, is courage, because you have to be courageous, to be loving. It takes a lot, because you will walk into situations, and she says it's not easy. You walk into situations where people look at you and like, what's going on with you? And we have to take the accountability, the responsibility, but also the courage to say, look, it's not about me anymore.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. Dr. Glenna, do you have any words, questions?
I can just say that, Dr. Pauline and I have talked before, several times actually, and I've sat in on some of her conversations. I find them amazing to sort of dovetail with everything that I work on and what I've been through. Much like Fuma was just describing, I've always been the only woman in the room. And I don't think I did not have the benefit of having been schooled by Dr. Pauline, but just pure dumb luck. I happened into some of those behaviors and perspectives on my own, and by goodness, it worked. But I also think, though, that we are in a certain transition. I will say that as difficult as it was to be the only woman in the room for a while, that gave me an advantage. And I will say this as well, because I have watched people of color be the only one in the room, or people of a particular religion be the only one in the room. And the reality is, when there's only one of you, you're the one that makes the effort. You're the one who goes the extra mile. They don't have to adopt your dietary practices and provide those in the cafeteria if there's only one of you. For example, when there get to be more of you, that's when it gets to be threatening. So what I found was, as the only woman in the room, I was really quite welcome. But then once 2 or 3 women got in the room, or as I saw people of color move into those rooms and there was not just one, but two or three, that's when the traditional power structures started to get nervous. And I did see some backlash against some of us as a result. So, I think that that's the sort of transition we're in right now, and that what Dr. Pauline offers us is a structure for thinking about that, but also importantly for talking about it. I mean, she has a talent for getting us to talk about it, which is important. You can't just think about it. You got to talk about it. You got to be there and connect and interact.
That is such an interesting perspective because, all the research and the anecdotes and all those other things say in order to get the real, not even so much a gender balance, but to have more women, have a woman feeling more secure, you have to have at least 3 women around that table, depending on the size of the table, obviously, but you have to have at least 3 women. So your perspective of when it comes to being more than one, it makes the men uncomfortable. And then that saying, they need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's the only way forward. But anyone else would like to have a perspective?
Can I just share perhaps some of the comments that were made in the chat box? Sharina said, women bring that, you're right, women do bring their lives to work because they have to, which is obviously not something that men have to do. Jill says, authentic harmony to me is love for our fellow human, no matter who they are, a foundation for collaboration. Frances said, thank you so much for such an engaging presentation. She said that on behalf of all of us, by the way. And Dr. Glenna said, she's ordered her book already.
Oh dear. So, and again, I think Rafaela, who's had to leave, said it was a fantastic and engaging presentation. I mean, I've got to say your style of presentation, even with a sore throat, or maybe it was because of the sore throat. No, of course it's not, was really, really engaging. It was great. It was great.
It took us on a journey, didn't it?
It most definitely did.
Now, can I be a bit cheesy and say, in the spirit of what we say we want to happen in the world, should we perhaps give the gentleman a chance to comment? Should we go to Marty? Marty, would you like to make a comment or a question?
No, Marty.
I just unmuted. No, I don't have any comments or questions. I've been enjoying Pauline's tonic for quite a while. Around the American West, we typically have a buckboard wagon hawker that drives around, and it's a cure-all tonic that is sold. And Pauline's typically back there in the wagon, mixing more of it up, and he'll open the curtain and say, we're almost out. You need to hurry up. And she's putting labels on the bottles, I tell her. So yesterday I was sending her photos of Moses with the 10 commandments up on the top of a mountain, bringing his people home. And so, yeah, she gets a kick out of me. But are there any questions for?
I want to be on that wagon with Dr. Pauline.
Yes.
There's space for me.
I typically vastly and strongly agree with the fact of we have got to involve men in the solution to this challenge and problem. I think we spent a good 10 years, I often say, with many complaints from ladies that I talk with, going to mega conventions hosted by Hewlett Packard International and spending $12 million to bring 9,000 women in. And it was a 7-day event. The hotel rooms alone were $1.4 million.
Well,
the guest speakers, 100 book signings. And they said, Marty, after like 10 years, you know, IBM and et cetera, it's just a bunch of women walking around. We're all talking to each other.
That's what Yvonne just said. Yeah. We need
We don't
to
have any men involved with the solution of all these problems. And so Pauline helped us last year in the World Council pass a breastfeeding station legislation for women to bring back to their country's bosses and employers. This is what we need. Here's how they have the little kiosks we can buy, boss. You go in there, you know, I can do my thing. The Society for Human Resource Management disallows the usage of a bathroom with a chair. That is not allowed in the United States as a place to do breastfeeding. It has to be a specific room. And then there's the need of, you know, refrigeration to store milk. I often have guests at our bed and breakfast will ask, is it an imposition if I bring in and put milk in a refrigerator I'm pumping? And I'm like, oh my God, no, absolutely not. Please. I mean, if you need to store, we went all through this with my wife. The manual pump sucked. We sprung for the money to get the automatic pump. She pumped as much and as long as she possibly could. And we know that milk is medically been proven for brain development. It is better than Infamil and powdered milks. The medical science behind that is so important. You know, these are things like that dudes are actually interested in, for, you know, like our daughter who's 11, you know, these are really important to us. So we want to know what to do. A lot of men actually have no idea what women need to be successful in a professional career or in the workplace. They have no idea. And the last thing I'll say is that's been very liberating. It's now okay to cry at work. It took tens of thousands of years, but men can actually cry at work.
Women still can't.
And it's cool. So
You can.
in the past, we would have a woman crying. There'd be a bunch of men like, dude, she's down there. She's down there crying right now, man. Go down there. I'm not going down there. No, I'll go with you. You know,
Marty. No one told me, Marty. I thought I had to put my battle armor on when I went into a corporate environment. But thanks for telling me we can cry.
Thank you so much for allowing men to actually cry at the office now. It's okay, finally. Thank you.
Certainly, Marty, you just brought up some really important points. The idea that we can all talk to other women forever about, you know, what should be the case. But sometimes us only talking to women gives the impression to men that we don't actually care what they think. Could that be true, Pauline?
Well, yes, this is what was interesting when I did my interviews with men. They felt really pleased that I had invited them to talk about themselves in a very non-ego way. I can share some of the interviews with you, but they were really kind of confused about what women really wanted, but they wanted them to be much more engaged with them. So I think what Marty's saying is so true, is we got to get these round table circles going. And that's what, when you look at the YouTube link that I put in, some of my sessions, the men are amazing that Marty was on them, men from all different countries, really wanting to know about women and men about, you know, they want to know about themselves. And these were busy men who said, you know, thank you for interviewing me.
If only there were more men like Marty and Joel, because this whole conversation, this kind of perspective, we've been hearing that from Joel.
Yes.
Since the very beginning. Joel, do you want to unmute for a moment? Because I can't tell you how many times you've said that you love the sort of feminine energy that's here and you love being able to share that experience with women.
It's thank you, Sydney, and happy birthday.
A while ago now.
Anyway, it's a
real... you get to 50, you don't really want to talk about it.
It's a real privilege to be here, and I always feel, I don't feel as if I shouldn't be here, if you see what I mean. I always feel as if I feel fairly comfortable. Marty was talking about men crying at work, and I suddenly went straight back to, by the way, Dr. Pauline, I've got so many notes and so many things. I have to have a conversation with you. There's so many things that just gelled, round tables and, you know, archetypes and balance. And, you know, Dr. Yvonne mentioning respect, so many different things. But just quickly, what March was talking about, I went back 40 years ago when I think I've cried in public maybe about 2 or 3 times in spaces where loads of sort of people are. And most of them have been to do with communication, not being able to be understood, people not being able to articulate and express and connect with someone else. And literally, I'm talking about 1978, over 40 odd years ago, when I first started as a social worker. But the privilege of being taught by so many different women, from working in a mother and babies unit back in 79, and from then on, being in those spaces. And lastly, in terms of men, it's not just about men, actually, in terms of what we need to expand the conversation. It's a little bit lower down, it's a bit younger. It's boys, it's teenagers, in particular, in terms of nurturing them and actually mentoring them. I mean, whether particularly more experienced men, if you will, I think have a role to play within that. But generally speaking, I just think this whole area, you started something, you just sparked something in me that I'm thinking, it's got me reflecting and going back. And I'd love to actually continue this kind of, I call it a feminine impulse. And I've been saying that since I started being, and I'm very, very attracted to that. And I don't give a monkeys. I'm happy to actually encompass both within me. Got no problem at all. I'm happy with that kind of balance. And that's what I think we should all be striving for. And, you know, not this separation, not this oppositional nonsense. Sorry, I'm going off on a rant.
No, you make very valid points, Pauline.
Yes. Thank you, Joel. I'm so appreciative. And I think that this is the start of the journey. This is, you know, we need to have conversations about all these topics. We've actually tackled quite a few of these topics. There's one of the sessions we did last year on kindness as a business value and how do men see it and how do women see it. So everybody's on the same agenda, but we still see it slightly different. And that's the value in bringing it to the workplace. That's my passion with Corporate Heart International, which is CHI-chi, it's a flow. We've got to flow these conversations into the workplace and into the community. So that's where we're starting. And then we can do some more masterclasses, Yvonne, where we deep dive into the topics and bring the archetypes in and find real solutions, practical ones that we can use. Thank you so much for all the comments. It's brilliant.
They're really, really good. I think we're going to close now with Dr. Glenna. She's been waiting patiently to make another comment. So please do.
Well, we might have passed this point, but maybe it's a nice kind of getting to be wrap up. And a nice, to me, it reflects a lot of what Dr. Pauline has said. Warren Buffett, who you may know is very famous at investing in talent and doing well as a result, heard him once say that not to consider women in the workforce is just as stupid as saying we're not going to hire anybody who's shorter than 5 feet tall. Because what you're missing is all of the talent that women can bring to the table. And you know, why would you make an artificial hiring decision based on height? You wouldn't make an artificial hiring decision based on gender, or he didn't say in that context, but I think it would be reasonable to assume he would agree on the basis of any other single characteristic that we have, like age or race. And so I wanted to tell just one story that's personal that this group doesn't know about. When I was in government, I fired someone. Now, I was a political appointee, and I was told that it is impossible to fire someone from the US federal government, but I did it. This gentleman quite literally never showed up to work, did not show up. But when I fired him, he sued me. And he sued me for gender discrimination. The data that he used is that I had hired more women into my office than men. Now, altogether, I had an office of 45 people. Everybody was a subject matter expert in some part of healthcare or health. And you know what? He was right. I did hire more women than men. But here's what he had not done. He had not looked at the gender balance when I inherited that office and the gender balance when I fired him and he sued me, which was identical. So the reality is I had hired more women, but the reason I hired more women is that more women who were in my office were put on a platform that allowed them to display their talent. And so they were stolen away from me. So the commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, the US FDA, famous organization, agency in our government, decided when he saw Dr. Mary Ann Danello, who worked for me, that he wanted her as his science advisor. And so he created the first ever position of the science advisor to the FDA commissioner to hire, Mary Ann Danello. All right. That's why so many women had been hired out. The talent that Warren Buffett suggested we have across the board just showed up in this particular situation. And when I think about what a loss it would have been if those women had not been placed on stage and given the chance to shine and show what they could do and the contributions they've gone on to make sense. I think everything you're doing, Pauline, to create this dialogue is just an important part of making that the usual way we go about doing life and doing business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Glenna. Yvonne, would it be, in the interest of fairness, would it be okay just to offer those who haven't had a chance to say something, a very, very brief statement, departure statement before we go? Just shake your head if you don't want to. Hey, Jill, I've seen you nodding and nodding. I wanted to ask you, Jill.
So I think it's Jill and Patricia. I did ask earlier who wanted to say, but you were also shy. So if you put your hand up, we'll go around.
I'm muted.
Yeah, Jill's not shy.
Okay, go for it, Jill, and then we'll come to Patricia.
Well, first and foremost, I'm just so pleased and happy to see Pauline back on stage like this, because I lived with her through the Christmas awfulness that she had to go through with her lovely partner. So the fact that he's well and he's walking, it just fills my heart. So thank you, and it's so good to see you back here. I've also been part of the conversations where the men go off and have a chat and the ladies go off and have a chat, and it just blows your mind when you've been talking about this and they come back with that, and it's like, what the, did you hear that? Were we on the same question? It's just incredible. And what Joel was saying, how we need to have conversations where we kind of forget what the gender is, or what the height is, or the color, or the nationality, because we're all human beings. And part of what I'm about is collaboration and coming together and supporting each other and loving each other. And this is what Pauline is all about. So I'm really pleased that I spent the time to come here. It's an evening here in the UK. And I was privileged enough to meet Pauline when she came over to the UK. Yes. And we had a little time together, and it was lovely to give her a hug, because that woman deserves a hug. She's been through a lot. And just thank you, Yvonne, for putting this event on. I'm really glad that I met all of you and that I was here for Pauline. So thank you very much.
Well, I hope it's not the last time we see you, Jill.
Absolutely, Jill. You sound like you are cut from WINTRADE global cloth.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be back. Thank you, ladies.
Good.
Thank you, Jill. Patricia.
Oh, great. Okay, I enjoyed it too. And I got to say, I'm going to give a little plug here, Pauline. You know where I'm going with this. I'm speaking now. I'm speaking now, and we debuted I'm speaking now, and it was a wonderful event, and I think that's a great way to really engage our men audience on LinkedIn, because we're still the minority there. You know, LinkedIn is a beautiful place and it's blossoming into a woman's world, but nonetheless it's still dominated by men. And being that, you know, and also on Facebook and YouTube, again, YouTube is still predominantly men. And these are analytics. So I think with that show, it's a great place to continue this conversation and bring it to the forefront so men can be engaged and join us and keep the conversation going. So that's what I want to say. And again, God bless everybody. This was beautiful.
You shocked me, Patricia. I'm in Germany. I thought you were going to start speaking German to me with a name like Freudenberg. I wanted to say, hello, wie geht's dir? But no, it wasn't. Pauline, you know Patricia, were you on her show?
Yes, and the show is called I'm Speaking Now. So this is, it's a wonderful,
Where would we find that show? Now she's plugged